Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for our nice fireside chat today. We have as our special guest Aymen Saidi from AWS and Eyal Ullard, and we'll be talking about how the AWS Cloud infrastructure and Qrystal data drive speed and innovation in the telco domain. Maybe I'll let the gentlemen introduce themselves first. Aymen, if you would like to go first.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks, Michael. So Ayman Saidi. I'm part of the AWS 5G product team, specifically focusing on everything OSS. So by OSS, we're talking about whether it's network analytics, automation, orchestration, and so on. And more accurately, we're also working on a new service called AWS Telco Network Builder, which help our customers to automate the lifecycle management of network function on AWS. So quite it's going to be quite a good talk. So it's great always to see you, both of you, and hopefully we'll see you in person very soon as well.
In person would be better. Eyal, you're muted.
So my name is Eyal Ullard. Thank you, Ayman and Michael. I'm responsible for sales and marketing in VoipFuture. My background is telco, many years in the telco domain, mostly on the VoIP aspect, with some, let's say, the build-up of the on the VoIP from customer perspective, service provider. So quite good experience with international sales. In VoipFuture, which I'm there for 15 years now, focus on the monitoring aspect, helping our customers to build up better voice and analytics in their environment.
Thank you. Before we come to the heart of this event here, let me maybe just set the stage and give some examples of how we at VoipFuture really ourselves experienced how the AWS Cloud and the ability to deploy new services and ideas rapidly, how we experienced this. Also, before I start, let me just, so I hope everyone can see my screen now. Before I start, maybe some words on VoipFuture. Everyone knows AWS and worldwide giant, and so I don't think that we need to introduce AWS in itself. So just very quickly, who is VoipFuture and what do we bring to the table? So VoipFuture was founded in 2007 in Hamburg in Germany, and our mission from day one was to enable premium voice service quality for our customers, which are communication service providers, large enterprises, banks, and wholesale carriers. So basically anyone who uses standard voice over IP services. So our technology is very unique. We can assess, aggregate, analyze, and visualize voice quality information to deliver data-driven insights. And in doing so, we like I said, we support standard voice services, VoLTE, voice over Wi-Fi, IMS, NGN. So basically, anything that is defined by ITU, ETSI, and other global standards. We are an AWS partner. We have numerous cloud deployments running, and also aside from these AWS deployments, we have a large installed base with a number of well-known brands that you see below. We have now a 15-year track record in the telco industry with our core product Qrystal, which is a passive VoIP analytics solution for SIP and RTP-based voice services. which integrates voice quality assurance and root cause analysis using our patented time slicing technology. So basically, our system consists of probes, which are distributed throughout the network. They receive a copy of the traffic, they analyze all the traffic 100%, and create what we call quality summaries, which are then sent to a central Qrystal manager, which provides a one-stop shop for the users. For it post-processes the data, aggregates the data, and basically then provides it to third-party services, which we'll see some examples now, but also provides it to the user for direct consumption. So, I mean, telco is not exactly a synonym for speed and innovation. Traditionally, the telco industry has been rather conservative. It's clear you want to reach every line on the planet, so you need to adhere to global standards. There are high requirements on availability, security, and privacy. And at least until the dawn of voice over IP, there was also a lot of proprietary hardware involved. So this is not an environment where you do sort of like typically changes overnight or spontaneous changes. So basically, the telco processes and the complexity they hamper innovation. And the picture you see here on the right is from the 1950s. It's not so long ago. The lady has been replaced by machines, but in essence, it's still about making connections. However, now cloud technologies such as the AWS Cloud are now changing the game, and I will give you some examples from our experience. What effect this has and how this is happening. So this is the first example is a short story. It's actually the shortest story you can think of. In February this year, on a Saturday night, we received this email from Chris. Do you offer 24/7 support? And what's the licensing fee for Qrystal? And so, I mean, it was a Saturday, but Eyal picked up the phone and called him. And just 24 hours later, the Qrystal system was installed and running in the VPC of the customer. He officially became customer, or they officially became customer, I think 3 days later. And they had some urgent troubleshooting to do, which Qrystal could help them with. And even though theoretically, I think everyone is aware that cloud technology can speed up the processes, this was a pretty amazing experience for us, because even with the best intentions under traditional on-premise conditions, this would have taken weeks and months and not just 24 hours. Coming to the next example, which combines basically this new speed but also new use cases. A longtime customer of ours, an international wholesale carriers, realized that they were facing two business challenges. First of all, the lead time for onboarding new customers to their IP interconnection services took ages, so around about 6 to 9 months. And also the carrier wanted to extend its global footprint also to areas, countries where they didn't have a physical presence, so no points of presence of their own. So the idea was to use AWS for interconnection services. And they expected, and they actually also achieved, to reduce the lead time for interconnections from 6 to 9 months to just a couple of weeks. Obviously, by using the AWS global infrastructure, they could also extend their geographical reach. and also the speed of deployment itself. Instead of shipping hardware, etc., to remote locations, they defined a golden template, or they wanted to have a golden template that allows to deploy all required network elements with a single mouse click. And so basically they did that. This golden template includes the most important elements are a routing engine, a session border controller, and our Qrystal monitoring probes. And this actually, it's not one golden template, but different ones for different capacity requirements. And in the end, this really allowed them to achieve their goal of, like minimal or rapid hardwareless POP deployment in countries without physical presence, and allowing different interconnect options for their customers. So basically, this was a major win for this customer, because obviously it dramatically reduced the effort on their side and allowed them to give a bit better and faster service. The third and last example that I want to talk about is something that we recently developed, a demonstrator for a show in Copenhagen for the DTW, which just shows how quickly the cloud enables, or how the cloud enables innovation in a very quick manner. So the idea was to address customer churn with a solution that predicts discontent or predicts customer churn, and allowed to take personalized measures to improve customer satisfaction. And so basically what we did, we developed a demonstrator in AWS, which uses Qrystal data, feeds it to Amazon Sagemaker to predict the churn probability, in our case based on on historical call quality only, but this can be extended. And then basically using this churn probability to determine the service level when a customer calls into an AWS Connect hotline. And this is basically the architecture of the demonstrator. So on the left-hand side, you see the customer calling service desk, which is run on AWS Connect. When the customer calls, the number, the A party, the caller number is passed on to an AWS Lambda function, which uses a SageMaker model to, which retrieves recent call quality data from Qrystal and passes this on to SageMaker model, which then basically returns a churn probability. And based on this, then the call flows are determined. And you see also on the far right, the purple box, that's something that we didn't do for the demonstrator, but obviously there are also other factors determining churn than call quality, but this could be included in the model rather easily. This is the AWS Connect implementation of the call flows and how the customers, depending on the churn probability, is transferred to different queues. And I don't want to go into the details of how this works, etc. Here at this moment, but what was also surprising to us was really how fast we could set this up. So in total, this took just a few person days. I was personally doing this AWS Connect implementation, and I didn't have any experience with AWS Connect itself. I didn't have actually never implemented a call center call flow. Yeah, I was done after 2 days, more or less. And same colleague on the other side doing the SageMaker model For her, it was the same story. So actually, in round about 4 to 5 person days, we set up this demonstrator, which is in my and I was amazed by our speed, and I don't think it's because we're particularly smart on this, but it just shows how the infrastructure enables innovation in a very rapid manner. So, having said all this, I would like to hand over to the gentleman, and yeah, I've lit the fireplace, and maybe I would like to ask Aymen the first question. I've just gave a few examples, just from our own experience at VoipFuture. Do you have some more examples of how Amazon drives speed and innovation in the telco domain?
No, absolutely. So first, I certainly invite the viewer to visit the AWS for Telecom page. We have a lot of use cases from our partners and customers defined there. I'll speak a little bit about AWS Telco Network Builder, which is, for example, a new service that we built and delivered in February of this year. And it was specifically listening to customers that were having challenges actually deploying network function. And what our customer are looking for is simplification of their operating model. So they want to operate and manage the network end to end as simple as possible. And what they're looking for is when we even look at the first thing within a network, right? The first thing that we need to do is actually deploy the network and then maintain and operate that network. But from a deployment perspective in telecommunication, we need to deploy a core network element, run a network element. We need to monitor those network elements, right? So we need to deploy probes as well. And customers have to define operating model for each individual component. So they have to define an operating model for a UPF, for an AMF, for an SMF. They have to define an operating model for a probe that will maybe operate on the N2 interface. Then they have to define an operating model for an IMS network. They have to define an operating model to manage, let's say, the VoipFuture probe, and then the monitoring of that. So that's actually quite costly, quite complex. And what we're looking for is trying to simplify that. So we're working with our customer to have one unified operating model that will help them, let's say, deploy an end-to-end network, inclusive of the probes. So by the end of that deployment, right? So there's one operating model to deploy the network. They'll be able to view their end-to-end network and operate on the end-to-end network. So that's one example of innovation that come directly from our customers. Like 90% of the innovation that AWS do, it's really direct requests from our customers, and the other 10% we like to think that we think for our customers in advance. But that's one example.
Thanks, Aymen. Eyal, we talked a lot about the infrastructure that AWS provides, but there is, in order to use this infrastructure, you also need data as an input. How do you see the role of data and its quality and accuracy, especially when it comes to new innovative services? How does it influence use cases, for example?
So accurate data was always a flag in our mission, provide customers information about the user experience. This is actually the basis for everything we do. If you do not have a very good data reflecting your actual user experience, this will you can't go for innovative use cases. And this was also one of the enabler from our customers to drive us towards the AWS, bringing the unique data that they are accustomed to work with in their on-prem environment, and this helped them quite a lot to reflect their current use cases, if it's a troubleshooting, if it's a network performance. So all those use cases always rely on a very detailed data that we provide. And they wanted that at least the same on the AWS, just that, and this will be probably the main discussion between Aymen and me. This was only the tip of the iceberg. Yes, this was lift and shift, bringing Qrystal data into the AWS, but once we got there, we found ourselves overwhelmed with a lot of additional capabilities, and enabling basically customers to move towards a better and more innovative use cases.
Do you have a specific example of, how data can turn the needle?
I think the churn example is one of the good example to showcase what we can do. So to predict churn is, I think, one of the hardest tasks on the telco domain. At least to be able to determine if a single customer that now calling should go to a priority queue. In my world so far, discussing with service provider, this is more or less science fiction. Customers are calling, unless they are defined by their number as a VIP customer, they will go always to the same queue. Here with this data, we are capable today to determine if customers suffer based on the very accurate capabilities that we have, user experience that we can check for a longer period of time, and we can say, okay, this customer is now calling. He had so-and-so minutes of disruption with a bad user experience, and better for the service provider to at least not to hang him over now a long queue before he's getting some services. And this can translate to the bottom line, money for our service providers. At the end, they are all to serve their customers. So this is one example. I can think at least about on additional examples how data can turn the needle. I think just to explain from, the user experience is one example, but the other example, which is very important for me personally, is the network performance. Network performance, if you're now looking on degradation on different points of the network, you need to be able to determine how severe this degradation from a network-wide aspect. And this accurate data that we have can help service provider to identify corners of the network that they are not performing. If we are talking about IMS corners, how is the user experience over there? Do they need to do any changes in their network, at least to bring a flag they have a serious problem? And this is accurate data is the key for everything.
By the way, if you have anything to add right away, Aymen or Eyal,
Yes.
jump in immediately, because I mean, I've got some questions to ask you that I'm interested in.
I'll jump on actually the accurate data, because I think that's an important task that we have even in telecommunication in general. And if we look at the telco over the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years, there were quite a lot of initiative being taken by our customers and partners to unify data, right? So because we're talking about data quality, data sources, so there's an idea that that we can unify data, that we can govern data, and that we need to govern data better. And that's an important challenge that some of our customers have. Within AWS, we like to help them specifically within the data governance, pardon me, using services like AWS Data Lake, for example. So it makes it a little bit easier to say system one can access data, right? Or which data can system one access? Or how do you prevent maybe the manipulation of data? Sometimes, I mean, there's human errors, but there are also systems errors, right? So how do you prevent that from happening? And that's a challenge that our customer are having, and we help some of our customers in that regard. So there's few use cases that we can certainly mention as well. So if there's any customer listening and needs some help, we'd be more than happy to help them with the governance and the data unification. So not only it make the quality better, but also it reduce cost, right? So like for all the, let's call it the old guys within the telco world, and I'm part of that as well. It's sometimes the same data is copied like 100 times, right, across the entire, let's say, the entire operation stack, and just finding a way to reduce those duplication has tremendous value for our customers, and then we can even go on and how to work on that data and how to improve on that data.
But maybe, I mean, it's not just that the same data is copied over, or available in the company like 1,000 times, but it's also like from my experience in troubleshooting actual issues in customer networks. Actually you don't get to the root cause, at its lowest level if you stay in one silo. And you just mentioned sort of how important it is to break these silos and in the long term make new user interfaces also possible, getting away from charts and KPI trend lines, etc., and just being able to, let's say, using generative AI, chat with the monitoring system, and it will draw from Qrystal, from log files, from whatever, and build the picture for you and be able to say, okay, yeah, you have an issue right now, and actually, I'm not sure if that really matters, but just half an hour before the firmware of some device was updated, and it's affecting all the calls going over this line. So I think breaking the silos and pouring the data into one lake is really key to anything that we'll see in the next years. Maybe one question. I started out with saying that the telco business is rather conservative for good reasons. I also gave some examples of where now our telco customers are getting more excited about the cloud and its services. Why do you think this is? What's driving telco companies to deploy more services in the cloud?
I mean, the best example is the example that you provided earlier, right? And always that amazing, right? So when you're looking at in this case, what VoipFuture is doing, you're analyzing the quality of voice call and call data, right? So when there's issue, when there's drop call, when you try to identify what component is producing failure that impact the end customers. And the best example, again, is the example you brought earlier, where a customer is having those challenges, right? So they're having issues in their network, right? So ultimately, the customer is bleeding, right? So there's issues. Their end users are having issues. It's loss of revenue. So how do you fix that? It's the speed, right? So it's the speed of bringing innovation to the customer. So the agility, the speed that the AWS Cloud bring to our customers is something that entice our customer to use it. And the best example is the example that you mentioned earlier. So Chris calling Eyal on a Saturday, and what is it, by Sunday evening, they already report on what the issue is on their network and how to fix those. And that's something that is extremely valuable for our customer is to get that speed, that innovation available for them.
Yeah, for me, Aymen, this was only the starting point. What I slowly realized that even when it's absolutely clear that we have suddenly, I would say, unlimited amount of computing power available to us in the AWS, and suddenly we have unlimited amount of buckets, and on the buckets of data lakes that we can pure a lot of information inside, including the Qrystal data, yes. And then on top of it, we are able to bring native tools within the AWS and then run new use cases. This is for me turn a lot of the way how I'm thinking, and this is like saving time, money, deploying now. You're able to enable new services whenever you want. The second example that Michael gave, the interconnection between service provider, this is really amazing. Think about that now. You just need to work hard on the first interconnection, which is the AWS interconnection. Once the service provider got it under control, all the interconnection is done, the security, everything that they need to make sure that the data and their availability is there and secure. Then now they're able to interconnect with additional service providers in a split of a second. But this is only the beginning. What next coming is really what we just said. the analysis, bring in new use cases, bring in new KPIs for service assurance. Many of our customers start to talk about zero-touch operations, taking the journey, how they can use the data that they have in order to better automate. And what does it mean? Automate, basically saving money from them, from the daily operation, when they can retire the old traditional way how to monitor and look on their services, how to do it more automatically, more efficient, and by far less costly as they do it today. And this was quite amazing from my side.
Maybe we've Eyal, maybe we've talked a bit about how the technology is helping and data is helping, but how does the partnership with AWS also help us in our business in acquiring new customers? Maybe if you want to say something about this.
Yeah. Okay. So I think from our perspective, anyhow, maybe even I'm speaking a little bit on the AWS perspective. You run your service on the cloud, on-prem, doesn't matter. You run your service, you need to make sure that this service is running in the optimal way. And for that, you need tools. And I think the relationship between AWS and us is quite strong, from the understanding that we have a good, unique data that is contributing to this journey from AWS customer and our customers, which is, in this case, they're the same customers. So as long as we are able to contribute to this mission, a very good, powerful product, this is a win-win situation between us and AWS. And at least from our perspective, I know that we are joining AWS with demos and discussions and the customers, joint customer discussion. And this is truly a good partnership from our end. Maybe, Aymen, you have additional ideas about that.
No, I mean, absolutely. So again, we have an AWS partner network, and VoipFuture, again, one of our partner. And ultimately within the partner network, what we want to achieve is help our customers have access to solutions that are innovative, but they're also cloud based, right? So architecture that are well architected on the cloud. So and that's why we work with the partner network to make sure that our customers have, for example, cost optimized solution, right? Solution that are performant, solution that are scalable, solution that are highly available, solution that are secure. So that's how we work, right? So we work on creating an architecture that is efficient for our customers across those 5 elements that I mentioned. And then we help our customer ultimately get access to that innovation, and that's what the partner network is all about.
Great. Maybe minding the time, one final question. I think it was you, Eyal. The holy grail of zero-touch automation was already mentioned. So let me ask you, and you can fight over who goes first. Where do you see? I mean, I personally, my feeling is we're just at the beginning. We're just starting to imagine where this might take us. This new quality in the telco domain, and where do you see us in 5 years' time in the telco business, in operating telco networks, and where will this take us?
So my guess, and this is also taking the strategy at VoipFuture, that we believe more service provider will join the cloud endeavor. They join the cloud endeavor because the overall benefit is quite amazing. How to operate, how to scale, how to offer better services. Voice is there, and maybe it's not the most fancy service anymore, but service providers needs to offer this as part of his services. And also the service providers, they're happy to reduce the cost and lower the cost, as this is one of their strategy, and also to maintain as easy and as good as possible. And this is why I'm thinking that at least from our perspective, the majority of the customers that we work today in the next 5 years will move their cores to the AWS backbone. They will enjoy new services. They will be able to offer new services, and all based on a joint combination of tools like VoipFuture, which is only one single tool among many other that they can join and combine and benefit on this large environment. And as I said, from my perspective, we are humble enough to know that yes, we are doing the voice service assurance. That's what this is our forte. This is what we can provide to the table. The premium voice quality data, and this is our part is in this very large consortium of partners in there.
That's a fantastic answer, Eyal. So you're putting a lot of pressure on me to bring new data point to your answer. But what I would like to add, actually, because it's ultimately that's where we want to be in 5 years, right? That's where our customer want to be. We've been talking in the industry for quite some time to move from communication service provider to digital service provider. But ultimately, when you start deconstructing that, what does it mean? Right. So what it means is our customers are looking for ways to deliver services to their customers in the click of a button. So I think right now we're at the beginning where we're building the building block to get to that point, to get to the point where a customer can automatically deploy a service, but also have knowledge on what that service is and have knowledge on how to optimize that service, or either change that service to continue to serve the end customers. So I see us heading that hopefully less than 5 years, but I think it's a good goal to have within the industry to get to that point. We are building the block with our customers through the AWS Cloud Continuum with services such as Outpost, Local Zone, and the region. So we help our customer in essence position the network function, but also application where it make more sense from an efficiency perspective, from a cost optimization perspective, whether you want a UPF, for example, on Outpost, or maybe a UPF in a local zone, or in the case of voice, there's certain different quality of service and maybe some latency that might be a little bit different than video. So maybe you can have it in region. So there's all that thought process that we're working with our customer to build, let's call it like a telecommunication optimize architecture across the AWS Cloud Continuum. And then it's all about automation, right? You need automation before you can even start taking advantage of advanced components such as generative AI. So we're working with our customers and partners such as yourself to bring that automation to reduce the operation friction, increase the automation level. And once we're there, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just the limits of imagination, right? So hopefully in 5 years, when we have this conversation, we will be amazed by what we achieved and what the industry is achieving as well.
Looking forward to that.
Actually, yeah. Oh, maybe I'll grow some hair until then. Maybe let's turn to questions from the audience. We have see two. This is about service automation, actually. So it says so NWDAF is considered a key building block for 5G service automation, and the question is, do you see a need for further standardization or application of such concepts to other telco services? So I think actually this is quite a good one, because I think there's always this balance of sort of like innovation. You go out and do some proprietary stuff, and it only works in your particular domain, or but then again, there's like telephony in itself is a great example of how standardization actually is also helpful, because otherwise we would be in sort of this insular environment where you would need to sign up to specific services to make a phone call to your relative in Australia, just because they use some other telephone network, which they unfortunately don't do. So is there do you see do you see a need for standardization, especially when it comes to service automation and sort of NWDAF like functions in the network, which is currently only specified for 5G, but I could imagine the same thing for other services?
So the standardization question is always an interesting question, but what I would like, let's say, in network or an NWDAF, let's actually deconstruct what the NWDAF is, right? So at its core, the NWDAF, what it does, it ingests data, right? It acts on that data, and it provides a certain set of recommendation. So the meaning of that, right? So without even looking at the standardization, because we're looking at 3GPP, what 3GPP is in essence trying to say is, I want a certain block of data to look like this. And then once that certain block of data look like this, I want a certain set of use cases. I want these components to do use case 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's actually skip that for a second, because I think as a telco industry, we often focus on the wrong thing, right? We're focusing on a standard, but the question is, why do we have to focus on that, right? Why can't we build a system that ultimately adapt as the standard evolve? Because today's standard is not the same standard as tomorrow. The standardization continue to make changes. So we have to forget about that for a second and look at what the function does, right? So we ingest data, we process on data, we make the data available, and we allow for query of data. So how do you do that, right? So within NWDAF, the meaning of that is you need to be able to ingest maybe through some mechanism, maybe like some AWS managed Kafka, so maybe a Kafka bus, right? Independently on how the data might be looking like. Maybe it is XML data as well. So you ingest the data, you process that data. So there's AWS services that allow you to read even what the data is, but also discover the catalog around the data. So the standard could be X or could be Y, but you will discover what the catalog is. Then once you have that, you do processing on the data. So you may make some sort of analysis. In the case of NWDAF, there's obviously intelligence that is needed. So you might be running a Sagemaker on it to see how it's behaving with a certain model, or to apply a model to the network function itself. And then you need some API, right? So you define an API gateway, and the API can change based on what network function is, right? So it could be standardized or it could be non-standardized, but it's all about the building block that allows you to evolve with the industry. So when I view NWDAF, and when actually I had those conversations with actually quite a large customer in North America, it isn't about the standard, because customers also wants to deviate and have their own little flavor. Partners want to have their own flavor. It's about the common architecture that you need to have to allow for that evolution. And I think that's where we need to concentrate when we speak about components such as NWDAF.
Right. Well, I mean, it's always a trade-off about, like flexibility and being able to communicate with each other. I mean, the components, in the network. Maybe Eyal, more hands-on question regarding my first example. I mean, maybe you could take it, because to expand a bit on the first example that I gave, and why wasn't the customer just using Wireshark for troubleshooting? So what's basically the question is, what's so special about or what was the need for Qrystal? Why didn't they just go ahead with
So actually, the customer was using other tools already. Just the lack of data or relevant data for voice troubleshooting was there. So basically, he had a case that he could not identify for quite some time an severe interconnection problem, and basically this not only jeopardizes operation capabilities, but also jeopardize the ability to keep customers, and he was facing a massive churn there. When customer was when customer was approaching me, he was like, my operation team is 5 days not sleeping. So this shows that when you're having an issue, a lack of data could be severely impact your service, and this is true for it's a case that we had in AWS, and I was really appreciate that I can help, but I'm discussing with customers every day, Volti customers, they're running their services, and without relevant data, they can determine if they have a drop call or silent call, and this is the things that accurate data is as critical to operation, and maybe even can impact, as I said, a massive churn if you're facing a longer drops in your network. And that's the high level what I have to say about that.
Okay, thanks, Eyal. So I think we've no more questions. I think we're coming to an end.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say to wrap this session up? And maybe Aymen?
Yeah, no, I mean, first, guys, I mean, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. So I'm certainly looking forward for us to continue our conversation, to continue to be innovator as well within this space. So it's always exciting to have that interaction with you. Just for our viewers, I will be at reInvent talking about AWS Telco Network Builders. I certainly invite the viewers that are attending the conference to come say hi. We're always looking to help our customers access the innovation. So if there's any question, and if our customer are looking to see how VoipFuture and AWS work together to address some of the challenges that they're having, please reach out. It will be a pleasure to help you out.
Thanks,
Simon. From my side, I appreciate that, Aymen. What I can think of is maybe next webinar we will find another real good use case with good customers that we have together that we could help. So thank you very much for helping us here.
My pleasure.
Thanks, guys. It was, as expected, actually a pleasure to have you both here. Thanks everyone for joining, and yeah, hope to see you soon in our next webinar, whenever that will be. Thank you, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.